Disney is about to lose over $100 million by the end of the summer. And Jeb Bush is going to raise $100 million by the end of the summer. Maybe Jeb could loan him some money. I'm Randall Terry. This is Voice of Resistance.
Those who forsake the law praise the wicked. Those who uphold the law resist them. Welcome to the Voice of Resistance. Here's your host, Randall Terry.
What happens if the circus goes bust? Riots. Riots in the street, I tell you. All right, I'm joking. Actually, I'm not joking totally. There probably would be riots in the street. We'll come back to that in a minute. Disney is set to lose about $140 million. Now, why am I even talking about that? Well, because Disney is one of the world's largest corporations. They actually own ABC. They own ESPN. They own Marvel. They own Lucasfilms. They own Pixar. If they see something that's doing really well, they gobble it up. They own, of course, Disneyland, Disney World, Euro Disney. I couldn't even keep track of all the resorts that they own. Anyway, they released a movie called Tomorrowland, which I have not seen. And frankly, I thought that it would be fun to go see it. But it's bombing. It's bombing. They expect it to lose worldwide. I mean, even after a worldwide release, they expect it to lose about $140 million. Why does this even matter to us? Well, I'll give you a couple reasons. Number one, it's really good news because, according to what I've heard, the film was really preachy about green. In other words, we all love the world, we all love the earth, we all have to live here, but there's people that don't get that we were given the grace and the gift by God to subdue the earth. All right? The earth is there for us. It's there for us to mine what's in it, to grow, to breed animals and to eat them, etc. But there are people who really don't want that. There are people who believe that man is the enemy. There are Malthusian liars. And by the way, if you have never read the work of Malthus, he wrote, oh gosh, I can't even remember the name of the book, I apologize. But you can just go ahead and Google his name and the theory and the book will come up. He was a Church of England cleric. The Church of England just keeps on giving. Think of Henry VIII and go forward. Anyway, he said that the world, the earth, could not sustain the humans that would be present in 20 to 30 years. Now, he wrote this in the 1800s, okay? And he was clearly proved wrong. He said that mankind will increase geometrically, but the production of food and things to sustain the human race would only increase mathematically, and therefore we had to do what we needed to do to stop the human race from reproducing. So Reverend Malthus was clearly wrong. But that doesn't stop the people who hold to his ideology from crying wolf repeatedly for decades. I remember as a boy when the 5 billion mark was hit and then the 6 billion mark. We were told then that the earth could not possibly sustain this many people. It's all a lie. Let me tell you something about the population of the earth. All right, this statistic I'm about to give you is a little bit old, but it's going to be close to true, okay? If you took the entire world's population and had them stand shoulder to shoulder in a 3 by 3 square, 9 square feet per person, the entire population of the world could stand in Jacksonville, Florida. If you took the entire population of the world and gave everyone 1,200 square feet, the entire population of the world could fit in Texas. Now, if you look at a map, of the world. And look at how teeny Texas is. Forget how small Jacksonville is. But if you look at the world in real terms, putting everyone shoulder to shoulder in Jacksonville, Florida, and then the rest of the world is for bread and circuses. Yeah. Then we don't have much to worry about. But anyway, let's come back around to Disney. I love a good story, and I do not want to be a hypocrite. We watch Disney films, we rent them, we buy them, we go see them when we can. But please understand that the disease in our culture is actually shown by how much money Disney has, how many companies they own, how many billions of dollars they are making. Billions. They spent, what, $2 billion or something to buy Marvel Comics? That's what they spent. So, what happens when the circuses go bust? The Roman tyrants kept the people subdued by bread and circuses. What happens if the circuses stop coming? I don't know. I just don't think it'll be good. I'll be right back.
You have two choices. I mean, you can try to raise your children by design, or you will raise them by default. There are no perfect parents. We're going to get it wrong sometimes. If we have a plan, we've got a better chance of getting it right in the long run.
There is something deep within the heart of every human being that longs for parental acceptance and approval. When does a boy become a man?
Get a group of guys around and ask them that question.
I don't think there's a certain age. Some men stay boys their whole life.
I would say, 16, 18 years old?
Wow, that's a good question.
When they get bar mitzvah.
Well, I think when he has a child. So I just became at 56, 56 years old.
Without the power of the Holy Spirit changing us and giving us power over our sin, we can't hope to be the dads that our kids need us to be.
Well, it's kind of funny because there are many people crying, we don't want a dynasty. I just wonder how many of them are Kennedy dynasty supporters. The Americans have had maybe 4 families that politically are dynastic. They're like dynasties. The Roosevelt family, the Kennedy family, the Bush family, and perhaps the Clinton family. Well, at least Hillary looks like she's going to be the Democratic nominee. So Jeb Bush is set, given his current pace, he is set to raise, not just for his hopeful or his presidential bid, but the PACs that his homeboys control. Set to raise $100 million by the end of June. Now let the full weight of that sink in. In my lifetime, it used to be that you didn't have to raise $100 million to run for president. 10 million, 20 million. He will raise $100 million 15 months out from the general election, 8 months out from the first primary. $100 million. And by the way, these PACs exist basically for one reason: to bludgeon your adversary. That's it. These PACs are not going to say how wonderful Jeb is. They're going to say how bad Rand Paul is, and Marco Rubio, and Ted Cruz. They exist to pummel your adversary. Now, there are people who will say that you shouldn't do that. As the playing field gets bigger and bigger, We should not beat up our fellow Republicans. Ronald Reagan's 11th commandment. God didn't know about that one, but Ronald Reagan said, "Thou shalt not speak ill of thy fellow Republican." And clearly the Republican Party has forgotten that. Especially, there's a real taste in the mouth of the Republican machine to speak ill of people who really want to defend babies from murder and who really want to have marriage be between one man and one woman. Let me do a quick turn. If you have not heard about it, there's going to be a very large prayer meeting, and Governor Bobby Jindal is going to be there. They expect about 10,000 people to be present, and allegedly no sales of t-shirts, no book sales, no DVD sales, simply prayer. And prayer for God's blessing, God's help on our country. I am hoping, I do not know whether it will come to pass or not, we'll find out. But I'm hoping that the people who stand at the microphone and who ask God's blessing for our country and ask God's forgiveness on our country, I'm hoping that they beg for the forgiveness of God for the blood that is crying out from the ground, the blood of innocent babies that is crying out from garbage dumps, from sewers, from landfills, from literally waste containers on the streets of New York. It's so despicable, it's so unthinkable, it's so horrific what we have done. And it's the number one sin that cries to God for vengeance, cries to God for judgment. So will this prayer meeting include people who are begging God's forgiveness because of child killing? We'll see. And in the second sin that cries to heaven for judgment is, you guessed it, homosexual relations. I'm just always careful what I say because I know that there are kids who watch the show with their moms and dads. It's a sin that cries to God for judgment. And our country is now glorifying it, saying it's a protected right, saying that it's the moral equivalent of marriage between a man and a woman. It's unthinkable where we have gone as a country. And so I'm glad that people are getting together to pray. Let's just see if their prayers are on point. Because Isaiah chapter 1 says, "When you spread out your hands in prayer, I will not listen. Though you multiply prayers, I will not hear. Your hands are covered with blood." That's what God said in Isaiah chapter 1. So we'll see if someone has the spiritual and biblical sense to recognize why God's justice and judgments and punishment are coming on this country. Please, Jesus, have mercy on our souls. Please, God, have mercy. I'll be right back. Do you want to get America out of the hands of wicked and unjust men and women who are destroying the republic before our eyes, and put leadership back into the hands of righteous men and women so that we don't die as a nation? Well, you're talking about social revolution, and there are rules in social revolution. We can look at the victorious social revolutions of the past, such as the end of slavery, the end of child labor, women's voting rights, the end of segregation, and so much more, and learn from their victories. Look at their actions, their images, their rhetoric, their sacrifices, and their final fruit. We will send you this series that originally cost $129, 7 books for students, 1 teacher's guide, if you'll give a gift of any size and just pay for shipping and handling. Take advantage of it today. Perhaps you have heard the news, very troubling, that ISIS, the Islamic State of Iraq and Syria, ISIS, or as they just want to call themselves, the Islamic State, they have seized enough radioactive material in the areas that they have prevailed in militarily. They've seized enough radioactive material to build their first dirty bomb, a low-grade nuclear weapon. They don't have a delivery system. They don't have the ability. Strike that from the record, please. They don't have an ICBM, an intercontinental ballistic missile. But, could you deliver a bomb on, say, an oil barge? Could you put it in, say, a container on one of those ships that has those containers, the size that you pull behind a railroad engine or a 18-wheeler, a big truck? Yes, I think you could. So anyway, ISIS has, according to reports, the ability now, actually they may not have the ability, but they have the parts to build a dirty bomb. I want to say two things about this. Number one, do they have the personnel? They would have to get somebody from, say, Pakistan or Iran. Pakistan has nuclear weapons, and they have nuclear scientists who are Muslims who conceivably could build a dirty bomb, a low-grade nuclear weapon that could do enormous damage in any city in the world, okay? Enormous damage. We don't know if they have anybody who has joined ranks with them who is capable of constructing the bomb. But it's a little bit frightening. I admit it. It really is. Especially coupled with the fact that Obama, in the last 3 days, has said, we don't have a strategy yet for dealing with ISIS. Now, he's been saying that for what, close to a year? He mocked them originally, saying that they were the JVs, the junior varsity. JV is a high school team. And now they're the #1 terrorist organization in the world, recruiting people from all over the world. There are people who say, we can't kill our way out of this. They're not correct. They're not correct. We could kill our way out of this. The problem is, and I'm going to go ahead and be really, really honest here. The just war theory of St. Augustine, one of the principles of modern war, and I don't mean modern in the last 20 years, I mean for centuries, is that we don't kill non-combatants. Okay? Now, in recent memory, World War II, for example, Dresden and Hiroshima and Nagasaki stand out as contradictions to that principle. For those of you who don't remember, Dresden was a city in Germany that had very little, if any, military value. And Churchill decided, and I love Winston Churchill. You might notice his bust behind me. Churchill decided that since the Germans were bombing London simply to terrify English citizens, they were bombing London to scare the Brits into surrender. Churchill ultimately decided that they were going to bomb Dresden. And they set the city on fire. I don't know how many thousands and thousands of civilians were killed. Nagasaki, Hiroshima, is where the U.S. detonated 2 nuclear weapons. Both of those cities had little military value. But nevertheless, the U.S. and England participated in the deliberate killing of civilians to break the will of the leaders of the Axis power. Now, ISIS is controlling innocent people. So here's the problem. If we start dropping bombs where we know ISIS is, just to kill them all, there's going to be a lot of civilian casualties. A lot of civilian casualties. The U.S. spent an enormous amount of blood and treasure to rid Iraq of Saddam Hussein, to participate in nation building. So if we went over there and began to decimate the strongholds of ISIS, there would be tens of thousands of civilians who were killed. And the political will does not exist to do that. And perhaps, and I mean this really, it might be unethical. So we're in a real pickle, people. We are in a real pickle. But one thing is certain. The U.S. has to pony up. You know, everyone's going, well, should we have gone to Iraq in the first place? That's not the question. The question now is, should we go to Iraq again right now to kill and destroy ISIS? I think the answer has to be yes. I have been a leader in the pro-life movement for 30 years. And sadly, we have not prevailed in our goal to make it a criminal act to kill an unborn baby. There's reasons why we have failed. I wrote this book, A Humble Plea, to Catholic bishops, to evangelical clergy, and to lay people, explaining where we went wrong and what we have to do to prevail. We've made this available as a PDF online for free. I encourage you to go and download your own copy. Why does a nice guy like me keep getting thrown in jail? I have been arrested almost 50 times and spent over a year of my life locked up in various prison facilities. And I wrote a book, many books. In fact, one of them is called, Why Does a Nice Guy Like Me Keep Getting Thrown in Jail? It's a theological work, answering those who say that the church should not be involved in politics or that we should retreat. I encourage you to get it. In fact, get one and give it to your pastor. What is important for us as individuals, for our families, for our nation? Most of us have heard the quip that no one has ever seen a trailer behind a hearse. When someone's about to be buried, they're not taking all their toys with them. They're going to God. Actually, they're going to the dust, the way they came into this world, maybe a few items put in by loved ones in their coffin. Death is the final enemy to be swallowed up in victory, according to the scriptures. But until that happens, until death is swallowed up in victory, what matters? One of the reasons that, well, the primary reason that I do this show, and I thank God for the privilege of doing it, is to try and jar myself and our viewers into thinking about what matters. Does Disney losing $140 million on Tomorrowland matter? A little, not that much. I mean, what matters? The most important thing that matters for each of us individually is that we make it to heaven and that we avoid hell. I mean, at the end of the day, what good does it do a man if he wins and gains the whole world but loses his soul? So my purpose in doing this show, and hopefully your purpose in watching it, is to have a kind of a reality check. What matters? It matters that we make it to heaven. It matters that we avoid hell. And it matters that while we're here, we stand for God's laws, for His principles, that we love God with all our heart, soul, mind, and strength, and that we love our neighbor as ourselves. That's what matters. There's a part of Christianity that is so simple that Jesus said you have to be like a little child to enter the kingdom of heaven. You don't have to be a great theologian. You have to have the faith of a child to love God with all your heart and soul, and to love your neighbor as yourself. That's it, people. That's what matters.